Good morning and welcome to Veterans Heartbeat, on the pulse of the veteran, where we discuss issues of health, happiness, opportunity, and well-being of interest to the veteran community, their families, and the community who honors them.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Veterans Heartbeat, brought to you by River, the Rural Institute for Veterans Education and Research. My name is Jason Zencraft. My co-host Ed Lisofsky is here with me, and he is the Executive Director of River. We welcome you to a weekly wide-ranging discussion of issues, events, opportunities, and needs in our veteran community. Morning, Ed. How you doing?
Morning, Jason.
We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Farside Signs. They create amazing-looking vehicle graphics that will drive traffic to your business. They are located at 1526 South Avenue West in Missoula. Follow them on the web, Instagram, and Facebook, or just stop on by.
Well, good morning, everybody. This morning, we're honored to have Troy Downing speak with us. He recently went to D.C., and, of course, when you go to D.C., you're exposed to a lot of germs, so he's gonna have to talk with a very scratchy voice this morning. Good morning, Troy. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me.
You know, it's been kind of a whirlwind of things going on in the veterans world. I thought it was time to bring you back and let's talk about some of the things that are going on there.
Right. You know, as you're fully aware, you know, in the veterans world, especially, you know, the VA, it's just a broken mess. And you've seen the letters of doctors leaving, of doctors being hired with medical malpractice histories. I've even heard from some whistleblowers about problems that are happening in the Montana VFW that we're investigating right now, and I'd love to have more information once we're able to investigate that further. But one of the things that's really important to me, and as you know, but I'll let your listeners know, you know, I'm a combat veteran. I've served 2 tours in Afghanistan. I understand the cost of freedom. And it's important to me that all my brothers and sisters in arms, all the people that we've sent to war to fight on our behalf, are given the tools and the resources necessary to thrive. I think we're doing a disservice when we have, and this is something I've said multiple times, you know, the VA is a government program that's run like a government program, and I'm tired of that. I'm tired of seeing government programs that don't have the same kind of scrutiny and accountability that we do in the private sector, and I think we're doing a disservice for our veteran community, you know, definitely in Montana and across this nation.
Well, recently, the rating for Montana wasn't that good, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was not at all. And you know,
we didn't even make average. I mean, we were below average.
Well, of course, and I think I might have told you this story before, but some of the things that I hear from my friends, you know, my VFW friends that, you know, get appointments. Like I'm just going to repeat myself. I had one who had an eye exam who. They made an appointment for him in San Francisco. He lives in Belgrade, Montana. I'm going, how does that make sense? And they tried to, you know, make it right by giving him 2 days in a hotel room. I mean, it just made no sense at all. And it just shows not only is it a disservice and an inconvenience for the veteran community, but it makes things a lot more expensive than they need to be. I mean, when you're doing something that's probably a, you know, $50 you know, eye exam, to spend, you know, maybe $1,000 in mileage and hotel rooms, it just makes no sense at all. And I just want to know, you know, who's watching over this, and why isn't this being addressed? Why aren't these problems being fixed? Again, as I said before, you know, we have a duty to, you know, help this community, and we're just not doing what we need to do.
Well, okay, I want to address some things with you, if that's okay. First of all, I've heard all kinds of nonsense about how the veterans are not the brightest bulb in the box.
Yeah, I saw that. Who was that? I think out of California. I can't remember the guy's name. He's a school teacher in California, and
a city councilman.
and a city council member. When I saw that, it I mean, he's just so misinformed. Like I said, I'm a veteran, but I've created industries. I've built companies. I've created jobs. I was a research scientist in the Cron Institute of Mathematical Sciences. I taught computer science. I was one of the originals at Yahoo. I built a, coast to coast commercial real estate company. And for him to say that people going into the service are not the brightest and the best, and I can't remember the other derogatory terms he used, is just ridiculous. Because my experience, the operators that I worked with, the people, the men and women that I went to war with, were the brightest, most dedicated, best mission-oriented people that I've ever worked with. And I'm proud to be part of that brotherhood. And to see somebody make a statement like that, obviously from a point of not only ignorance, but I'd say even hatred, is just very, very disturbing to me.
Well, we run into a lot of negativity because we're creating a new path for veterans at the Institute.
Right.
And we talked to you. You came in and saw the Institute. We are right now in the middle of negotiating tripling our space at a different location. But what did you see? What was your feelings when you came in there?
Well, actually, I was impressed at the scope and scale of what you were doing, because I obviously hadn't seen that before. But one of the things that's nice is you're trying different things. You're from tried and true to experimenting with new therapies, and I think that's all good stuff. And I'm glad that there are people out there and organizations out there like yours that are trying to find solutions for our veteran community that are, in pain or trying to heal or trying to, get past, various issues that they're going through in their lives. And I'm really happy to see that.
Well, we told you, but I don't know if you saw the news story, we did get peer-reviewed on our research, and we're pretty happy with that.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And to get peer-reviewed and then invited to an oral presentation, that's pretty spectacular, I think.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you should be obviously very happy with that. But, again, going back to the base sentiment is, organizations like yours are out there trying to find solutions where we have problems. And, makes me happy that there are organizations that are committed to finding solutions. And so Godspeed to you.
Well, the big problem that we see is our biggest speed bump, not a road, is the issues we have with the VA.
Right.
I mean, they're very much in the box for treatment. We get veterans coming in all the time going, I don't want the pills, but they give me the pills, or I don't want this. It's like, I thought we fought for freedom for what we wanted in our medical care. Right.
Well, and I've spoken about this before. One of the things that I find very disturbing is our, eagerness, or not our eagerness, or more of the eagerness to use chemistry to solve problems. And I just don't believe that is normally the way to solve a problem. You get somebody in there, who's had some, traumatic issue, and of course they have post-traumatic stress, and that's a normal human reaction. And we're so eager to say, okay, well, you must be depressed here. Let me give you some SSRI. Let me give you some Xanax or some Wellbutrin or some Paxil or whatever that is. And the problem is, twofold, and you're fully aware of this. But the first thing is we're creating these lifetime victims. We're putting them on this chemistry, whereas there's much better ways for most of these people. I'm not going to make a blanket statement that isn't the correct treatment for somebody, but I'd say that's the small minority, not the majority. And one of the issues that we see, and as you know, and in case your listeners don't know, we've got a very high rate of veteran suicides in the state. And if you look at the label of side effects on a lot of these chemicals that they're giving them to treat depression and post-traumatic stress, is one of the labeled side effects is may cause suicidal thoughts or tendencies. And so, there's clearly some correlation there, and I think that we need to be a lot more careful about just taking pills and using that as a solution rather than finding other things, finding outings, finding ways of actually putting meaningful activity into their lives to try to get them engaged, get them in the outdoors, get them in team building exercises, getting them together and talking and doing things that actually start to change their outlook on life without using chemistry to just numb it. I think that we're doing a tremendous disservice, and we're creating a culture of lifetime victims by doing that.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I know that you've been working with vets, taking them fishing.
Yes.
And one of the activities that they're asking us for permission to do is allow our students to build their own fishing rods.
Awesome. I got to tell you, I've been doing the fly fishing as therapy for, injured veterans. I've been doing that for a long time. And it sounds really simple. Okay, you're taking these guys out, you're teaching them how to cast a fly rod. And we we offer this to mostly, Purple Heart recipients. And so, these are guys and gals that have had, traumatic experiences. And, very often you get them in and they've got, very typical post-traumatic stress symptoms, introverted, non-trusting, quiet, all that typical, outward expression of post-traumatic stress. And you get them out there and you start teaching them a skill and you start engaging them. And then you get them on waters in Montana, which, obviously everybody listening to this knows that that's just God's country. And you get them on these rivers, catching fish and learning a new skill and, just going. And we teach them how to tie flies and the whole, everything around that. And after a week, because these programs are a week long, and after a week, you just see night and day between the outward expression of happiness and social tendencies, and everything that you see is just night and day from day 1 to day 7, and it's just tremendously effective to use, the outdoors and learning a skill and the camaraderie of being out, on this water with a companion, a fishing guide, and then coming back with the group and learning to tie flies. It's just tremendously effective. And, that's a non-chemistry solution that works for a lot of people. And I encourage groups like yours to find non-chemical solutions for dealing with these problems.
Well, on Monday, you're going to be visiting our Sydney office. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
I hope you get your eyes wide open for what's going on in eastern Montana. It's a disaster.
Sorry to hear that.
I mean, there is nothing for these folks out there.
Right.
So I do want to bring you back and have a report on what you found out there.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to meeting your staff out there.
Well, the veterans, not just my staff, are excited about meeting with you.
Well, great. I'm excited as well.
But, okay, we heard in the president's speech that he was for choice. What's your thoughts on that?
We've had issues with that. I mean, it lost. It did not. It did not work the last go around. It didn't have the funding to continue. But for rural America, which is obviously most of Montana, we need solutions other than the typical VA solution. It's just too hard. We need to have something, in my opinion, closer to what a lot of these, men and women had while they were in service. Especially I talked to a lot of, younger veterans coming out that were completely happy with TRICARE and have no interest in using the VA. And they say, well, can't we get some form of TRICARE? I've even heard some say I'd be willing to pay for it. I just want to continue with something like what I had. And I think having the ability to just go to a local doctor and have that, and here's a big problem, have that, be paid for in a reasonable time so that you can actually get doctors that are confident they're going to get paid. I think that is the best solution for veterans in rural areas, which, is most of Montana. We need to have something where you're not spending 2 days driving across the state, one in each direction to see treatment. It's just not reasonable. We need to have solutions that are in people's backyards. And, the typical model, in my opinion, just does not work.
So Veterans Choice has, as you know, failed on a number of occasions. However, there is an opportunity, like you said, with TRICARE type insurance, to where the VA isn't picking your doctor and picking where you're going to be. I think that's a reasonable solution. Do you not?
I think that's the only solution in rural America. I think there's no reasonable solution other than that in rural America. And I think that we need to look really closely at those types of solutions, because it's just not reasonable, especially somebody that is, not doing well, that does need, medical care to make them, drive across the state, stay in a hotel, see a doctor, drive all the way back. And some of them can't do that themselves anyway. They've got to have, some caregiver, a spouse, a child, whoever doing that for them. I just think it's an undue burden on veterans in rural communities. I think that that we need to offer those types of solutions for those veterans.
Well, let me hit another issue that really bothers me. And that's this. We get these veterans that come out with massive TBIs or traumatic brain injuries, and they're not able to function for themselves. So the VA pays for a caregiver, specifically usually the wife, and it's not a good solution because the wife doesn't know how to handle. I mean, these guys have fits of anger. They can do all kinds of things. And we've saved them. We've done heroic measures in the field to get them to a higher level of care that saves them. But then what? These guys are pretty much left with nothing. Right. Comments?
I don't know if they're really. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm struggling to get a good answer for this, because it's tragic that we have that there are issues with that. That's not always the case. I mean, obviously, you have some that have very capable family members that can, care for them. But, TBI is such a broad spectrum of issues, from complete dysfunction to, mood disorders to everything else. And so it's hard for me to make a blanket statement about that. But, obviously, if it gets to the point where you are not functional without a professional caregiver, then I think we need to, seriously look at how we, bridge that gap. But it's just as TBI can, manifest itself in so many different ways, from, behavioral to mood to functional. It's just such a broad spectrum of issues based on TBI that it's hard to make a blanket statement on what needs to be done. I think that's more of a case-by-case issue.
Right, but I'm just saying, when they get to the severe level, there's nothing for them. Nursing homes, not really a good answer. You don't want to put them in a locked ward. That's not a good answer. So we're struggling at the Institute with, I've got like 5 cases right now that I'm talking about, and I'm struggling. I don't know what to do for them.
I don't know what to say other than I'm glad that there are organizations like yours that are at least trying to find something.
I can tell you that there's a lot of struggle in a lot of different ways for a lot of this stuff. As you travel around the state, what do you see as the biggest issue in the veterans community?
As I travel around the state, biggest issue that I see is just people generally don't know, that's the right word, don't know that the VA is going to be there for them, that's a resource for them. There's just a general acceptance that it's dysfunctional and broken. And it's interesting to me that so few people think it can be fixed, and they just accept it as broken. And that to me is pretty depressing, because it can be fixed. It needs to be fixed. And again, as I said in the beginning of this interview, what I think needs to happen is we need to scrap the whole idea of how it's run right now and start putting private sector accountability into that. I think that we can reduce the costs and increase effectiveness by just running it with accountability and running it not like a government program, but like a private sector a venture. And I think that that's the way that we start to build confidence in the VA, start making our veterans more comfortable that it is there for them, that it is a resource for them, and will continue to be. And it's not just this, painful bureaucratic mess that may or may not work for them.
What's your suggestion when somebody is up against the bureaucrats and it becomes an impossible situation for them?
Well, right now, unfortunately, my best response to that is make your voice heard. And I know a lot of your listeners and a lot of my friends will call their representatives in the Senate, in Congress, to try to be a voice for them when something's not working, and continue doing that. Continue telling people if there's a problem. Continue calling organizations like yours. Call into radio shows like this. Get that word out there, because with awareness, we can start to, create change. And without awareness, with just acceptance of a broken system, we're basically, perpetuating that broken system.
From what you've also seen when you're traveling around the state, the broken system, what's the number one thing that it's causing?
What's the number one thing that it caused?
Is happening because of the VA being subpar.
Well, obviously there's wait time issues. There's access to care issues. There's even like the story I told you of having to travel, tremendous amounts of distance to get care. And again, it comes back to this whole acceptance thing. When I start talking to some of my friends in my VFW post who, start talking about how long it takes for them to actually see somebody and get something done, it's just disheartening. And, that's, those are the big issues of wait times and quality of care.
Well, and I had you speak with a whistleblower a few days ago, and you were gracious enough to take that call. It was disheartening to hear how people at the Choice Payment Center would just, to make their numbers, disqualify a qualified claim.
Yeah, and that's something that was very disturbing. And like I said earlier, we're still researching that, so I don't want to comment too deeply until we've actually.
No, we're just going. Yeah.
Right.
Well, the other thing that I really appreciate about you, Troy, is you are trying to make a difference. And I will tell you that from my perspective, and I know Jason feels the same way, having somebody like you at least give a damn means an awful lot.
Right. Well, as you're fully aware, even, obviously I was a combat veteran. I have lots of friends that are veterans, lots of friends that are still in service. I'm an active member in the Montana VFW. I have a foundation that I'm on the advisory board of that, uses fly fishing as therapy for veterans. The veterans issues, the veterans life, the veterans issues in Montana are very important to me, very, very close to my heart. And this has been something that's been important to me, for many, many years, for decades. That's not going to change. I think that we need to continue watching out for those who have protected us, that have gone to war for us, that have done that. And it's embarrassing to me that we don't do everything that we can to make sure that they are taken care of.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time this morning, and I hope you have a good eye-opening in Sydney. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for making your staff and making the Sydney veterans available. I'm very much looking forward to meeting them.
Well, thank you very much this morning.
All right, thank you.
This morning, Mr. Zenkgraft out there, who's a big-time listener, it's his birthday, and we wish to give him a good shout-out and happy birthday, Mr. Zenkgraft.
So thank you very much for listening to Veterans Heartbeat. We'd not be able to bring it to you without all the support of the listeners. And thank you again to Farside Signs for sponsoring the show. If you do need a unique vehicle design, swing on by and check them out. Also, thank you to our main sponsor, River. River has an array of services such as veterans-focused education, a vestibular disorder clinic, and now non-pharmaceutical treatments for pain, anxiety, and depression. Check them out on Facebook or on the web at riverofchange.org. Lastly, we'd like to show our appreciation to all of our veterans. Thank you for serving our country and keeping it safe.